So, I recently competed in the 2025 Pokemon World Championships. This is my first ever World Championships that I have been to and competed in, and I went there with the aim of getting a top 128 finish. And I'm happy to say that I did manage to do that, just barely, because I finished exactly 128th, but I was very happy with my results. So I thought I'd make this team report, partially for my own benefit, so if I ever come back to the team in the future or just want to remember how it works, I've got this. But I also just wanted to share it because I was really happy with the team, I'm really happy with how it came out, and I think it's pretty cool. So this is the team here. We've got Koraidon, Calyrex Shadow, Weezing, Chi-Yu, Iron Hands, and Iron Bundle. Now, when Regulation I started, I knew pretty early on that I wanted to be using Weezing. That's because I noticed that most of the non-restricteds really relied on their ability, because obviously in this higher power level format, the non-restricteds don't necessarily have the stats to keep up with the restricted, so instead, most of them really rely on their ability to keep up. So for example, if we just look at some of the top used non-restricteds here, and restricteds for that matter as well, because a lot of those rely on their ability. We've got Incineroar, obviously really loves to have Intimidate. Miraidon and Zamazenta lose a lot of damage without their abilities. Urshifu can't hit through Protect, Rillaboom without Grassy Terrain, Whimsicott and Grimmsnarl without Prankster, they're all a lot weaker. And even turning off Photosynthesis from Raging Bolt and Fluttermane, for example, again, very, very useful. So I used a similar team to this back in Utrecht, where the only Pokemon difference was Brute Bonnet over Iron Bundle. But I changed to the Iron Bundle for Worlds, and I'll explain why later on. So yeah, I'll just go through all of the individual Pokemon, talk about my thought process, why they were picked, the movesets, that sort of thing. So I'll actually start off with the Weezing, because even though it isn't the restricted, it is what I built the team around, it is the star of the show. So, like I said before, being able to turn off abilities is super useful. So, back in Utrecht, I was using a Rocky Helmet Weezing with Strange Steam, Taunt, Toxic Spikes, and Protect. But I wanted to change onto Poison Gas and Toxic Spikes. That's because I was struggling a bit with the Calyrex Ice matchup. I found that I really wanted to get the poison onto it, but there were a lot of ways for the opponent to play around, so they could lead the Calyrex, prevent the Weezing from taunting, and then it'd be a bit of a dead weight in the matchup. I didn't really like that. Even with Will-O-Wisp, again, between taunts and fake outs and Terrifiers, I just found it a little inconsistent, and of course, by missing. However, with Poison Gas and Toxic Spikes, I found the Weezing could avoid the problem that I find Weezing can sometimes run into, which is it can feel a bit passive on the field. It can feel like it's not doing anything. But with this set, I can always either be Poison Gassing and Toxic Spiking. So for the first few turns, I can just make sure that everything on their team either is poisoned or will be poisoned. That consistent pressure really pairs well with the fairly aggressive mons I've got in the back or paired with it. So as you can see, I think Iron Hands is my only guy with any semblance of bulk. Everyone else is very, very offensive. And then I also use Strange Steam. I know you often see Play Rough or Gunk Shot on these sets because its attack is a little higher and obviously you're not going to be affected by Intimidates. But I really liked just that extra bit of accuracy, that extra 5% accuracy just felt like it went a long way. And also, a chance to confuse never goes amiss. This stat spread is basically what this does is it survives. It can always survive a Electro Drift from a Miraidon, a Specs Miraidon that is, because of the neutralizing gas turning off Electric Terrain and Hadron Engine. It can survive a Behemoth Blade from Azation, again a neutral Behemoth Blade, not +1 because of the neutralizing gas. Precipice Blades, it survives. To be honest, there's very few things that actually one-shot it. Astral Barrage, it can usually live those. So yeah, it just lives a lot of things. The Terra Ground on this, I never clicked Terra. I knew I was never going to click Terra. The Terra Ground there was just to put a little bit of team sheet pressure on the opponent, just make them not want to maybe click Volt Switch into it, but that was basically it. And yeah, I used Covert Cloak on this because again, when I had Brute Bonnet on the team in Utrecht, the Bonnet was holding the cloak, so Weezing might as well have a Rocky Helmet. It's good value. But I just really enjoyed being immune to Fake Out, because being able to set up the T-Spikes and set up the Poison Gas very, very effectively without having to worry about Fake Outs did just make the team flow a lot better, I found. It meant, because as well, Weezing seems to, it can feel a bit do-nothing sometimes, so being able to not get further slowed down by those Fake Outs and just feel like you've really done nothing and contributed nothing except to your ability, the Covert Cloak was very helpful. Also, funnily enough, it didn't come up loads, but being immune to the Snarl special attack shop was actually quite useful, just because it'd let you win a lot of one-on-one endgames where they might have a Chi-Yu and another guy on low HP, but with the Snarls, Weezing would be doing no damage, whereas it can stay consistently doing reasonable damage, which I quite enjoyed. So yeah, that was the Weezing, and I'll move on to the restricteds. So firstly, we have the Koraidon. Now, I mean, for both restricteds, Koraidon, Calyrex, Shadow, I feel like they're always going to be the choices when you're pairing with a Weezing. Koraidon, because it doesn't rely on its ability. I mean, not its ability, it relies on its ability. It doesn't rely on its item quite as much as most other restricteds or most other Pokemon do. Obviously, Clear Amulet is nice, but with the Weezing, you're not worried about the Intimidate drops. So it's very happy to run that ability shield. And Calyrex obviously doesn't care about neutralizing gas because it's as one. So, this Koraidon, fairly standard moveset, just, Collision Course, Flare Blitz, Flame Charge, and Protect. But you'll probably notice that this Koraidon is a lot bulkier and a lot slower than most other Koraidon that you might be used to seeing. Now, this is because I was running a more offensive, a more faster, less bulky Koraidon back in Utrecht. But that was when Assault Vest Miraidon was a lot more common. Nowadays, Choice Specs Miraidon is most definitely the prominent set. So with this bulk and a Terrafire, this Koraidon can actually live a Draco Meteor from a Miraidon when neutralizing gas is up. Now, that is a very important calc, because being able to survive that means that I can fire off an attack into it. I can do a good 60-70% with Collision Course. I can Flame Charge and then outspeed the next turn. But yeah, being able to survive that was huge. It came up so often. Another calc that came up quite often is with this bulk, I can always survive a Life Orb, Astral Barrage with Beads of Ruin. Now, again, quite notable, because with this team I often wanted to lead Chi-Yu and Koraidon, because obviously Chi-Yu loves to be in the sun. So being able to guarantee that I live that hit was very important, because it meant I didn't have to protect and snarl. I wasn't forced to snarl the first turn. I had a lot more options, which again made it feel a lot easier to use. And then this amount of attack means that most of the time you're one-shotting with Terrifier. You're one-shotting a Lunala through its Shadow Shield, because of the neutralizing gas, so turns off Shadow Shield. So again, that's really useful into those teams, because a lot of Lunala teams really rely on being able to take that one big hit and then respond later. But being able to just absolutely tear through it, just click it immediately and kill the Lunala, meant that those matchups were just a lot more easy to play. Again, Flame Charge, not much to talk about, just into the Calyrex Shadow teams, if you can get one speed boost up, you're outspeeding them. This speed stat means that you outspeed all the Calyrex Shadows and all the Scarf guys that want to be a little faster than that, so, you're outspeeding your Scarf Chi-Yus, your Scarf Urshas, even your Jolly Scarf Ursh, in case I happen to bump into that. But yeah, so that was very useful. Next up, we've got the Calyrex. This is probably the Pokemon I have the least to say about. It is a very standard set, just 252, 252, timid. Some people run in modest, but I think more modest on the Life Orb sets, to be fair. But no, this is always going to be timid. The Sash one's always going to be timid. The only thing I had in mind was, Encore. I tested a couple of other moves. I tested Disable. I tested Pollen Puff just for a bit of extra coverage. Disable was nice into the Miraidons, but in the end, Encore is just so valuable, because it makes opponents think twice about fake outing in front of a Calyrex. Fake outing the partner, obviously. Makes them think twice about protecting, makes them think twice about clicking a setup move. There's just so many instances where Encore just stops them from clicking an option. So even though I didn't actually click Encore that much, the fact that it's there prevents the opponent from clicking those moves a lot more. Next we have the Chi-Yu. So Chi-Yu is sort of a natural fit on this team because it gets boosted by the sun, boosted by Koraidon Sun, and it also synergizes really nicely with Calyrex because obviously you're boosting the Calyrex's damage output. The set is Heatwave, Snarl, Overheat, and Ruination. Ruination definitely went through a few different incarnations. I tried Flamethrower, Dark Pulse, even Burning Jealousy, just so I could have a 100% accurate, spread fire type move. But I'm really glad I put Ruination on because it gives you some really interesting calcs. So, for example, I wasn't expecting to see much Hero, but into a Hero you can Ruination and then Terra Ghost Astral Barrage to kill it. Into Koraidon in particular as well, you can Ruination and you don't even have to Terra Astral Barrage to kill that, whereas no other combination of moves safely kills a Koraidon because obviously it's got that Terra Fairy most of the time. So if you Heatwave and it doesn't Terra, you're not doing much. If you Snarl or Dark Pulse and it does Terra, you're not doing enough. So having that Ruination just to get guaranteed damage was really nice. It also makes it feel like a bit less of a sitting duck against in front of things like an AV Incineroar. You could just chip them down, or in front of Calyrex Ice as well, being able to just... There was a game in, I think it was my round 3, I can't remember though, where I was playing against a Calyrex Ice. And in my game 2, I was able to just lead Chi-Yu and Calyrex and just rip a Ruination into Terra Ghost Astral Barrage. Now, that does only barely kill, like, depending on how bulky they are, it won't kill. But for most of the more offensive ones, it'll kill most, if not all of the time. And then, yeah, these 3 moves don't really need much explanation. Heatwave is just a really good move when it lands. Luckily, I don't think I missed a Heatwave, which was very lucky, because I was clicking it a lot. But yeah, Heatwave in the sun, just extremely powerful. Snarl shuts down a lot of options, especially into those Kali Shadow teams. It's really nice just for slowing those down. And Overheat, again, just big burst damage, especially in the sun. Beads of Ruin Overheat in the sun, you one-shotting so many things. It's such a good move. And this spread I've been using since, because I was using Chi-Yu back in Reg G as well on the Zamazenta team. And I think a lot of people use this spread. It's just such a good spread. Like, you don't need to be timid with the Choice Scarf. You only need Modest because this outspeeds your Adamant Urshifu, that outspeeds your Calyrex Shadows. It outspeeds everything you need to. And yeah, then you've just got enough bulk just to hit. Enough special attack just to hit the bump. And this amount of bulk is really nice because, again, I don't know exactly what it does, to be honest. Like, I never found any exact calcs that it does, but there were so many times when my Chi was living on just low HP after taking a couple of attacks, where without this amount of HP investment, it'd definitely be dying. Something I did especially notice, to be fair, is it just means that you can have your Chi-Yu in a Calyrex Shadow endgame and it'll win a lot more often. Because if a Calyrex gets up a couple of boosts, it can still muscle through your Chi-Yu. Or even if it doesn't get the boosts up, three life orb astral barrages might take you, things like that. So if you've still got a partner alive, it can get a bit awkward. But with this bulk, suddenly you're taking those hits a lot better. You turn the 3 KOs into 4 KOs, and you can just close up those endgames a lot more cleanly. We've got Terra Ghost on this, just to fake out immunity. Occasionally, you can use it defensively, so you've got things like, Surging Strikes in the sun with Terra Ghost, you're living that quite comfortably now. Just random things, really, that you're living, but it was mostly for the fake out immunity. So now, moving on to Iron Hands. Now, this is basically my only switching on the team. He's the only guy who I can safely bring in on attacks. But again, I really enjoyed using him. I think he definitely felt like one of the most important Pokemon on the team, just because, again, he was the only guy who could sort of come in on attacks and take them with any resemblance of comfort. So, AV, not much to say. And then the moveset is Fake Out, Wild Charge, Volt Switch, and low kick. So fake out and low kick self-explanatory. Wild charge again fairly self-explanatory, but the volt switch was because I really valued having a pivoting option. So in a previous version of a team, I was running Drain Punch, but I just found that I wasn't clicking it that much, and I never really got that much HP back. I mean, obviously, yeah, if you can launch a Drain Punch into like a Shien Power or something, it's amazing value. But more often than not, I was just wanting to click low kick because of the damage. I wasn't really caring about the little bit of HP I'd get because, again, in this very high power format, I didn't really value getting a little bit of healing when I was taking so much damage to begin with. However, Volt Switch allows you to lead Iron Hands with Wheezing a lot more comfortably. So what you can do, for example, is you can lead in a lot of matchups, so in certain matchups, you can lead Iron Hands and Wheezing, fake out and either Toxic Spikes and Poison Gas, get some residual damage going, and then the next turn you can Volt Switch out. If they kill the Iron Hands on the Volt Switch, whatever, that's fine, you get one of your restricted in. But otherwise, you get a very free switch-in to either Koraidon or Calyrex Shadow. The opponent's probably already taken 2 ticks of poison damage by the time they come in, and all of a sudden, everything is in a lot better range of your attacks. So even in a game where, if for example you wanted to even drop Koraidon, you could lead Hands Wheezing, get your poison, a couple of ticks of residual damage to the down to 75% as you Volt Switch into the Calyrex, and then you can switch in Chi-Yu in replace of the Wheezing, and suddenly you've got a Calyrex Shadow with its Sash intact, with Terror, with Beads of Ruin, with both opponents already weakened, and if you really need a bit more damage, you can protect and pivot around a bit more. So I just really liked that. That was the a big use case of Volt Switch, but just having that option, just to have it in the mid game and have a slow pivot out, meant that I could get my big guys in a lot more often and a lot more easily. Because, like I say, this team doesn't have much of a defensive backbone, so you really need those slow switches. The Terror type is Water, just generally good Terror type, but it was specifically Water because I really wanted it into those hard Trick Room teams, so, your Kali Ice, Lunala, Ursaluna, Smeargle, Indeedee nonsense teams, and the Terror Water just meant that you can take those attacks a lot easier, especially from the Calyrex Ice. Obviously, you could consider Terror Bug, for the opposing Iron Hands, but it's sort of whatever. Another thing about this Iron Hands is it's same with all Iron Hands, is it's very good into Miraidon. So as Miraidon gives you the Quark Drive boost, you are suddenly doing so much damage with your low kick and your wild charging volts, which, I mean, let's just have a look. Obviously this won't represent the usage at Worlds, but it's going to be similar, like 42% usage of Miraidon. And this team isn't a bad matchup for Miraidon necessarily, so like, they will be bringing the Miraidon, which means that your Quark Drive, suddenly you're doing a lot of damage. That's especially useful into the Miraidon Kali Ice teams, because that means that your low kick will always very comfortably be 2-shot in the Calyrex Ice, when before it might not, with Protect and Leftovers, it might, be able to heal out of range. But with the Quark Drive, it just does so much damage. And yeah, low kick, again into Miraidon, does a lot of damage. Just in terrain in general, it just does so much, and so does Wild Charge. This EV spreads, again, I'm not completely sure, can't completely remember what it does, because it's an EV spread I made a long time ago, but again, it just works. You min speed, so you can be fighting in Trick Room, so you can deal with, if they get the Trick Room up, you've at least, at worst case, got a speed tie with Ursaluna and Kali Ice, which is always nice. Fair amount of damage just to make sure that you're hitting hard. Plenty of special bulk, which you really need, especially with all the Kali Shadows and Miraidons running round. Again, being able to just like switch in on the Draco from a Miraidon is extremely valuable. So yeah, that was the Iron Hands. And finally, we have the Iron Bundle, who I appreciate looks a bit odd on this sort of team. Now, he is in the 6th slot, and he is very much the 6th Mon on this team. I was experimenting with this slot a lot before Worlds. There were a lot of different things, but the reason I landed on Iron Bundle was because I was struggling in particular into the Kali Ice team, the one with Kali Ice, Amoongus, Miraidon, and friends. But it's basically Kali Ice, Amoongus, because if you see with this team, I want to be leading Weezing sometimes into that team. Well, I want to be leading Weezing into that team, but that means I'm denying their electric terrain, which makes Amoongus just wreak absolute havoc once Trick Room's up. And between that and just Glacial Lances, again, I don't have many great guys into Glacial Lance. I was just taking way too much damage, and I was losing those battles. I want to say 9 times out of 10, it was really bad. Even Iron Hands against an Amoongus, it just rage powders. You're doing nothing. It's not a good time. So I experimented with a lot. I experimented with Farigarath. I experimented with very bulky defensive Ogerpon. I experimented with all sorts, and I wasn't really getting anywhere. But then I was testing, and I realised that Iron Bundle might actually be who I'm looking for. So into those teams, he double resists ice. He can just sit on Calyrex ice forever, which is extremely valuable. And on those teams, it was often Scarf Miraidon. So with the Quark Drive, you now outspeed the Miraidon, and an Icy Wind plus a Terra Ghost Astral will always kill a non-terrored Miraidon, and they're not usually terroring that Miraidon anyway, because if they don't terror the Miraidon, then suddenly the Calyrex Ice is extremely vulnerable to Koraidon, Kali Shadow, and Chi-Yu, so they don't usually want to be terroring the Miraidon. So being able to just Icy Wind into Astral really, really helped, because otherwise you just get snarled or hit by Miraidon. It's just not a good time. So that felt really good. Taunt, again, sort of self-explanatory, really good into Calyrex Ice. But there were a lot of matchups where the taunt actually really came in handy. So into Hard Trick Room, again, I really loved having Iron Bundle, because it meant that if they led Indeedee or Smeargle and the Trick Room setter, I can taunt the Indeedee or Smeargle, or rather, I can taunt so I can then taunt the Indeedee Smeargle, stop that from doing anything, get them stuck on the field, and then if it's a Calyrex Ice next to them, they're sort of stuck. The Iron Bundle takes the attacks really, really well. Or alternatively, because of the safety goggles, if it's a Smeargle lead, you can just taunt the Calyrex slot or the other Trick Room setter slot, stop them from setting it up, and again, before you know it, you're in a good position. You've got Iron Bundle in, they can't spore you, they can't really do damage to you. It just feels like a really nice position to be in. Hydro Pump is a move I'd rather not have, because it's 80% accurate. But again, so many of those Calyrexes were Terrafire, so being able just to or had an Assault Vest Incineroar on the team, which I can struggle to deal with. So just having a big button to click into those was extremely useful. It also meant that even if they were Terra Fairy, you could do things like Astral Barrage into Hydro Pump into any move you wanted to kill a Calyrex. It just put a lot of things in range. It did solid damage. I mean, Iron Bundle's already pretty strong. But yeah, so I really enjoyed having Hydro Pump, despite the fact that it is 80% accurate. I only had to click it once during Worlds, luckily though, and it did land that one time. So yeah, thank you Iron Bundle. Terra Ghost, similar to Chi-Yu, just team sheep pressure really. It takes fake outs, and I mean, I want to say there's no defensive properties to this thing at all. Like its physical defense is good, but you're not taking any moves on the special side, so it's purely there just to stop them from clicking fake out into you, which is actually quite valuable. And yeah, here's the spreads. It's fairly basic. It's just max modest, so you always outspeed these Scarf Miraidons, because going into it I was like, surely no one's going to be running timid Scarf Miraidon, so I think I'm pretty safe, because Iron Bundle very handily outspeeds Miraidon by 1, so I can just use that, and then with the Quark Drive I'll always outspeed the Miraidons. And then it was just as much special attack as I can put in without changing it to boost a special attack, and then just shove the rest in bulk. Handily though, this bulk did actually give me enough special defense to live a sharp beak bleak windstorm from a Tornadus, which had been picking up the team with Calyrex Shadows Armor with Smeagol and Tornadus, the Decorate Spore nonsense one. This Iron Bundle was actually really good into those teams because if it leads Smeagol and Tornadus, you just have so many options. You can protect the partner and Icy Wind, and then the turn after you can taunt. Like I say, because you always live that Bleak Windstorm, you are always guaranteed to to survive. So you can always get the Icy Wind off. It just gives you a good start in that team, where before I did actually struggle into that composition, because if you look at the rest of the Pokemon, Smeagol plus Tornadus is actually a bit of a pain, because they've just got free Tailwind Spore into whatever the hell they want, into Decorate plus Bleak Windstorm. Iron Hands is my closest thing to taking that, but it's just the biggest Spore target in the world. So I was very happy to have Iron Bundle just to throw off a taunt, take those attacks very nicely, and be able just to keep me in that game. So yeah, that is the team. Like I say, I'm very happy with the team itself. So I'll just finish by talking over a couple of matchups, just so you've got an idea of how it might be played. So this is a relatively standard Calyrex Shadow Zamazenta balance team. So into this sort of team, I found people always wanted to be leading either Smeagol Calyrex or Incineroar Calyrex into me. So against this, especially in the game 1, I'd usually be leading Koraidon plus Chi-Yu, because what you can do in that position is you can fire off a Heat Wave and also a Flame Charge into the Incineroar slot, because it can't protect, or the Smeagol slot because it can't protect. Because then, whichever slots they decide to fake out, you either get your speed boost, which means on the next turn you can snap the Calyrex Shadow, or you get your Heat Wave, which 2 shots of Calyrex Shadow. Because yeah, with the thing with the team I'm using is if the Calyrex gets a boost up with its Terra Dark, things can get very sticky very quickly. So, but as long as you can sort of lead proactively and stop the Calyrex from getting going, it gets a lot easier. And yeah, even in a worst case scenario where they don't lead that, you've got Ruination onto Zamazenta, or you can switch for Chi-Yu out into Calyrex, try and catch a Body Press, or Encore them into Wide Guard. Another reason why Encore is really good, just because it's really good at shutting down Zamazentas, because unless they specifically click Heavy Slam, they're just not touching your Calyrex Shadow for the next 3 turns, which is very useful. So yeah, that was the general plan with that team. And then in the back, so you'd have Chi-Yu, Koraidon in the front, and then in the back just something like Iron Hands plus Cali Shadow. Iron Hands just for fake out pressure. Low Kick obviously does a lot of damage to Zamazenta. It does a lot of damage to Raging Bolt. But yeah, fake out is the main reason why I want Iron Hands in that matchup. And also, yeah, Calyrex Shadow, don't really need to explain. It's your other restricted. It just does a lot of damage. It's very good. Also, with a Koraidon in the front, it's actually quite easy to take down the Incineroar, or at least get it in range of an Astral Barrage in the back, because you're just firing off, even if you're just firing off Flame Charge, Terrifire Flame Charges and Heat Waves into it, it's only a couple of attacks before it's actually in Astral Barrage range, if it's not AV, which is very handy. So yeah, so that was the general idea into this team. Obviously, there's 1,000,001 different Calyrex Shadow Zamazenta teams. It's very flexible, but I did find that was actually quite good into those teams in general. If you're not predicting them to bring Incineroar in the front, if you're predicting them to go for a different lead, you can lead with Weezing, because into a non-fake out lead, Weezing is pretty good. The reason that I don't like Weezing into Incineroar plus Calyrex Shadow is because they can very easily, so say you lead like Weezing Koraidon, they can very easily fake out your Koraidon, get a nasty plot off. Your best case scenario of Weezing is what? You get a Poison Gas off, but then they just click Astral Barrage like 3 times and then the game's over, which is a bit sad. So that's why you don't want to lead Weezing game 1, but Weezing game 2 or 3 is a mix-up. it can be really good if you're predicting the Zamazenta to lead, because then they don't get the defense boost and suddenly they're a lot more vulnerable. Especially if you lead Weezing Koraidon, because they don't get the defense boost and they're sort of forced to either protect or Terra Water, which means that your poison suddenly is affecting them, which is very, very nice. So yeah, that's sort of the idea of how you want to handle this team. But again, you can be quite flexible. The only thing I'd say is if they don't have the Tornadus, you don't want to be bringing Bundle here. It, dies to Kali, dies to Zama, dies to Raging Bolt, dies to Rilla. It's not a good time. It's not a good time for him. So for the next team, we'll look at this. This is another fairly common team. We've got the Lunala Miraidon team, which has been common since Utrecht, to be honest. It's been common for quite a while now. Into this sort of team, you want to be leading Koraidon Weezing. As I mentioned before, Koraidon can just one-shot a Lunala because it ignores Shadow Shield, and also because they're not getting their electric terrain up, they're not getting their electric seed going. So that Lunala is suddenly very, very vulnerable. This composition in particular is why it's important to have that much bulk on Koraidon, because otherwise they could just snipe you with a Draco Meteor and then you're just a bit sad. So, yeah, it means that you can just fire off a massive attack into Lunala and kill it. If they switch out, they're switching still taking a ton of damage. So yeah, you want to lead with those two. Getting poison up against this team is very nice. And then again, you want Calyrex in the back, definitely. And you can choose between Chi-Yu and Iron Hands. I usually prefer Iron Hands just because it matches up quite well into like everything. So if they do manage to get up a Trick Room, if they switch out and pivot around and do manage to get up a Trick Room, it's good insurance, because otherwise Ursaluna does just sort of like tear through your entire team. But also Iron Hands is extremely good into the Miraidon. Fake Out is already doing like 20%, 25% because of the boost. But you're just threatening heavy damage onto pretty much every single Pokemon on the team except for Whimsicott. So yeah, like I say, Weezing Koraidon is very nice into this team. Another benefit of Weezing, it turns off Guts. So yeah, being able to do that, like there was a game, for example, I was playing against Glick in round 7, and there was a turn when he Earthquakes with his Ursaluna, when he was very clearly expecting it to kill both my Weezing and Iron Hands, but they both lived on like low single digits. So yeah, thanks to Weezing for that, because obviously turning off the Guts and also applying the burn damage because it doesn't have Guts. So you've got halved attack. It's very, very useful. Often into this team, they'll start by leading Miraidon Lunala, and then in game 2 they might change up to Whimsicott plus a friend, Whimsicott Miraidon or Whimsicott Lunala. But if you've got the Weezing, you can sort of just keep going as you were, because Whimsicott is very threatened. It's usually has to Terra, because the Whimsicotts are usually even slower than the Koraidon, because most Whimsicotts are quite slow because they've got that Prankster. So they have to Terra to avoid getting one shot by Flame Charge. So you can often just read into that Collision Course straight into them. But yeah, or you can just target the Lunala, get your poisons up, and just sort of stall out the Tailwind from there, because it is relatively easy to stall out the Tailwind because of the tools you've got. And also because, I mean, they don't usually bring urshifu into this team, but if they do, you've got Weezing, you can protect through it. They can't break through, you protect. It just makes it a lot more easy. This team also not having many protects means, again, you can just keep clicking those big, big moves with Calyrex and Koraidon. And because you've got the help of the Weezing cutting their damage and the residual damage, it's not a bad time to have to tear through this team. And one of the last teams I want to talk about is this team. I mentioned it earlier, the Miraidon, Calyrex, Amoonguss team. But if you look at this team, you'll notice that Iron Bundle plus Calyrex Shadow is actually very strong into this. Icy Wind plus Astral will probably kill this. Terra Fire, it's scared of Terra Fire because of Hydro Pump. Again, Incineroar threatened by Hydro Pump. Landorus threatened by Icy Wind and any attack from Calyrex. Amoonguss threatened by Taunt. Even if they get the Trick Room off, you've still got your Iron Bundle on the field where it can just sit in front of this Amoonguss Cali Ice forever It doesn't care. It can just taunt. It can threaten damage into any of the switch-ins. But yeah, so like I say, the Iron Bundle alone turned this matchup from a 90 and a 10 to 90 matchup in their favour to, honestly, I want to say probably like a 70-30 in my favour. It felt really good. Other things with this team, again, you want to try not to let your Calyrex Shadow be facing the Miraidon outside of Trick Room, just because you just get snarled and you just get worn down, unless you've got the Iron Bundle to help you, of course. And you do also want to be bringing Iron Hands, because even though Amoonguss and Landorus are very good into it, Iron Hands is so good into Miraidon and Calyrex Ice, and also matches up pretty decently into Incin and Urshifu, that why not bring it, really? And finally, I just want to mention this team because this is a team that I put a lot of thought into, because it was initially quite a bad matchup, and this is actually a team that I faced. I want to say it was in my round 5 at Worlds, but I faced this team or a very similar version of this team. And this is another time when Iron Bundle just absolutely comes into its own. I genuinely clicked taunt I clicked taunt 7 times in one of the games against my opponent, just because I was constantly switching between taunting the Calyrex, the Iron Jugulus, and the Smeargle. Because again, with koraidon in the back, they don't want to be clicking Hurricane. Snarl isn't doing that much. You're also threatening decent damage onto them with Iron Bundle because of the Icy Wind. Wheezing means that they can't get the booster energy up and they can't get the rain up. So yeah, you can sort of just taunt and get, like, in the games that I played against this team, I figured out that just keeping Bundle on the field from turn 1, getting your poisons up as soon as possible, and just stalling out the game as much as you can puts you in a really good position, because once you've got poison, once you've got a good amount of poison chip onto everything, and they've got no speed control because they've got no tailwind, they've got no trick room because of taunt, you can just clean up the rest of the game with Kali Ice. Not Kali Ice, Kali Shadow, which is very useful. But yeah, I initially really didn't like this matchup, specifically because of the Iron Jugulus just snarling through the Kali Ice. I keep saying Kali Ice, snarling through the Kali Shadow, which made it very awkward. But yeah, that just makes it not the case, which is very nice. I could talk about a few more matchups, but I think as a general rule, your main guys are Wheezing Koraidon lead with Calyrex Shadow and your choice of a friend in the back, probably Chi or Iron Hands, depending if you want fake out pressure or damage. But yeah, that basically sums up the report. As I said before, I'm very happy with how the team ended up. I'm almost a bit sad that there's no more Reg Eye tournaments that I can bring this to, because like I say, I think I put a lot of work into this team. But then again, I'm not sure if it's just Stockholm Syndrome of I'm convinced myself that I like Reg Eye because of how much I played it, and I actually, might dread to see it again in the future once I've had a bit of a break from it. Who knows? But for the time being, yeah, I really enjoyed this team. I really enjoyed the tournament. And yeah, thank you very much for watching.